Hey sports fans, it's Larry Eater with RunBlogRun, and we're going to be interviewing David Bedford, the longtime elite coordinator, former executive race director of the London Marathon, former world record holder in the 10,000 meters, and if you're a real runner, you know who David Bedford is. David, thank you for your time today.
A pleasure.
Okay, so we're going to start from the very beginning. So a lot of Americans think you wore black socks when you competed, and they were actually red. Would you tell us the real story so I don't screw it up anymore?
So this was something that happened when I was about 18, 19, and a few of the other guys at the time, Ian McCafferty, Ian Stewart, were starting to be a bit more colour coordinated than old-fashioned white socks or no socks. And I went for red. There was a personal reason why I went for red, which I've never divulged to anyone.
Okay.
Anyone.
All right.
Okay, and this is not going to be the reason why I changed that.
Yeah.
And
Cheers.
The reason why people think they're black and white is that colour TV had only started to come at that time, and most people got their pictures of overseas athletes in black and white, and it's as simple as that.
Okay. Can you tell us, what do you remember about your first race in running? How old were you, and what can you tell us about it?
Right, I was 14,
Okay.
and I wanted to be a footballer, but I wasn't good enough to be a footballer. My best position was in goal because I didn't mind diving in the mud, and then all of a sudden I saw that other people who wanted to get out of doing sport at school would not bring their kid, and they were sent walking around the park, and a couple of them ran, and I thought that might be quite nice, and I ran around the park and I did more circuits. It's about a mile round. I did more circuits in the hour lesson, as it were, than anyone else. And for the first time in the school, the PE teacher introduced cross-country championships. So I was Whitefield School's first cross-country champion.
How many times did you race against Ron Clarke?
Not very often. I believe it was about 1967 or 68. Ron was over here in the UK, and there was a sort of a record attempt at 10,000 metres, and I was asked to be in the field to help with the pacemaking. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't good enough at that time to challenge him. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd have been 17 then or something like
Sure.
that, coming up to 18. But I was good enough to take some of the pace. And I ran, I can't remember the exact details, but it would be something like run 3 or 4 laps at his pace, and then drop back, let him come round and pick up again. Mm-hmm. That was at Crystal Palace, but I met Ron Clarke at the old White City Stadium,
Okay.
which was the high church of British athletics. You know, it had the 1908 Olympics athletics there, and you know, that was the centre of athletics in the UK. And I remember, I wasn't good enough to race him there, but I was good enough to take my kit, and when I saw him going to warm up beforehand under the stands of the stadium, I remember running with him and pumping questions at him.
Oh wow!
Including one which was, how do you know when you're good enough to get paid, right? And Ron said, "Don't worry about it, son. They'll let you know." Right? And it was, and that was my first in-depth conversation with a guy that I admired over many years, for me, the greatest distance runner we have ever seen. And I was only thinking the other day with this crass, clumsy attempt by European Athletic Association to say that all past world records were should be made null and void. And remember, I've got one, so I've got a stake in the game.
Sure, yeah.
But Ron had 19 or 20, and his inspiration in life then was Zatopek had another 9 or 10, and I just thought, this is, how can you try and wipe out this important part of athletics history? And athletics generally has been really poor with its history. First of all, we have no history we ever talk about until the foundation of the 3As in 1890. Mm-hmm. So athletics that happened 200, 300, 400 years before that never gets mentioned. In golf it does.
Yes, that's true.
In golf they really care about their history. In athletics we just seem to be prepared to give it up at any time, at any moment, if it's viewed as short-term appropriate, and I find that shocking.
Ron Clarke paid you a tribute. I got to meet him one time. It was with Derek Clayton, who was my boss at Runner's World, and he talked about a 10,000 that was quite windy, where you ran 27:47 or 27:49. Can you tell us about that race?
Yeah, so this would have been, I'm not sure the year, probably 1971.
Okay.
I would have thought. So I was 21, and the 3A's championships were for 10,000 metres were part of a Great Britain versus France international at Portsmouth on a cinder track, 80 degrees hot day.
Oh my God.
And most of the run you had to do out in the second lane because the inside lane was so churned up. And I ran 27:47, which was a European record. I think the interesting thing about it was actually the first 4 laps for anyone that's that interested, mm-hmm. Which was 71, easy.
Okay.
71, 59, 60, 61.
Oh my gosh.
And I was 150 metres up on the rest, and then just churned it out. So that was part of my attempt to experiment. But I also knew at that time that I would never win a race in the last 200 metres, and that was part of understanding my strengths but also my weaknesses. And as most coaches will tell you, it's very difficult to make a guide that with a rolling start, right? Okay, and a kind person holding a stopwatch who can't break 56 seconds. They're never going to break 50 seconds, no matter how much time and effort you put into them.
What I remember from that race, because I've watched it on video, is Alan Pascoe cheering you on the side of the track running around. To me, it was just fascinating to watch. Yeah. But during that race, did you recognize you were running very fast, obviously? How did you feel over the last couple laps? What do you recall from that race?
I can't ever remember winning a race and feeling absolutely knackered. Mm-hmm. Every race I lost, I felt knackered. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a sensation in distance running where when you got it under control and you're running well, you feel that you could go on forever. Interestingly, last night at Parliament Hill at the festival of 10,000s, a couple of people spoke about another event that I'm quite famous for within athletic folklore, which was and it's appropriate because it was at Parliament Hill and it was the Southern Cross Country Championships, which were 9 miles in those days, and you'll have seen from your journey over there and previous ones that it's a hilly area.
Yes.
And I had won the southern south of England, okay, just so everyone understands, senior cross country championships, 9 miles, 3 hard muddy laps. But I was young enough to take part in the junior race, which happened after the senior race. And one of the athletic officials from my club, half jokingly really, said, "I've got your number here for the junior 6 miles. What do you think?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll have a go." And in the back of my mind it was get up the first hill and then just drop out and just have a laugh.
Sure.
But at the top of the hill there were too many people there just to drop out. So I thought I'll leave it a mile when I was out of sight. And by the time I got to a mile I'd got back into my running legs again and stayed in the race and won the junior 6 miles after the senior 9 mile. Which is about how you can suddenly get back into your running very easily.
Sure.
You know, your body motor can really keep you going. That won't ever happen again because the athletic officials, the 3A's people, felt this was disgusting that anyone should do this and change the order
Oh my God.
of events for ever and a day since then.
Yeah.
You know, so we're now 50 years on or 45 years on, and now the junior race is the first race. So it would be harder to win the junior race and then run the senior race.